Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Amanda, and I am the Community Outreach Coordinator here at the Missouri Poison Center. Today, we are going to talk about a little bit of a different topic. We do a lot of current things that are in our homes and our schools and our environments, but I want to talk about some of the antique poisons, some of the things we've heard throughout history that are poisons or poisonous substances that might still be around. And it's a little more informal, and I'm just going to show you some pictures as well. Um, in terms of poisons throughout history, poisoning and poisons throughout history have had a long standing. Back in 1850 BC, Homer writes of the use of arrows poisoned with venom. And even through 69 BC, Egyptian Queen Cleopatra experiments with strychnine and other poisons on prisoners, and also commits suicide or dies by suicide by the bite of a Egyptian snake. And so there are other poisons through history in terms of being used, whether to harm oneself or others, or just in everyday household products. And so my history with antique poisons is that I collect a lot of these. These are some of the things that I collect, whether it's a medication or chemicals or other products. A lot of this is just a hobby. And since I work in the Poison Center world, I thought I'd share some of these with you as well. So some of these pictures will be some of the ones that I have in my collection. So again, a brief history through ancient civilizations. Poisoning is very much entwined with mythology and belief. And there was even goddesses of poison that were worshipped back in early ancient history. And then the Greeks were certainly notable to have a history with poison as well. They used a form of poisoning for capital punishment in terms of, you know, for prisoners. They also had different poisoning became very commonplace at the dinner table. So, for example, you know, poison in food, poisons placed in food as well. And then moving on to the Middle Ages, poisoning took another step forward or backward, you could say, when arsenic was transformed into this odorless, tasteless powder. And it would elude detection, so people wouldn't know it was in something. And many sinister and unfortunate events have happened with the use of arsenic. In terms of the Middle Ages, poisons were also commonly traded and available to the general public. You could go down and buy grams or pounds of these products. To the fact that in 1662, King Louis passed a decree forbidding apothecaries to sell these poisonous substances. So they started to kind of break down on selling and distributing them. Some would say that the Victorian era is regarded as the heyday for poisons. It's a period of much of the notable poisoners hail throughout history. And in fact, it was so popular as a weapon of harm that it was readily available, again, in stores and in very commonplace, and that they actually made laws. The Arsenic Act of 1851 was introduced to bring crime under control. And the field of toxicology, or the field of understanding toxic substances, also came about. So that it was the time we were learning more about these substances as well. Also, many of these poisons were in our homes, in everyday items such as cosmetics and other pesticides and things, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And more in modern times now, we think about poisons most definitely in our homes, certainly things like medication and other household products, other chemicals like antifreeze or other things. Poisons are still around. All right, so let's look at a few of these common poisons throughout history. First off, arsenic. It was known in Roman times to poison people's rivals and even emperors. It was a water-soluble, tasteless solid, so it was easily added to drinks, and it was made from a byproduct of copper and lead refining. So in the 1600s, it was sold to people, and it was also known as inheritance powder. So many people used it in a malicious form. And then into the 1800s, it became widely available in things such as weed killers, flypaper, rat poisons, and many of these household products were then used for nefarious purposes. Also, what we see in terms of other types of poison, strychnine was extracted from the seeds of a Southeast Asian tree, and it was traded throughout the Far East. And it was formatted to be a tonic, and it was actually prescribed by doctors in small doses for illness. And so that then became something that was dangerous and actually some other concerns. Next off is our cyanide, and cyanide is a natural component in certain nuts, such as almonds and some bush material. And the cyanide has been used in many different things throughout history. You may remember in the 1980s, the Tylenol capsules that were tampered with, and cyanide was placed in there. And so it is something that we have seen throughout history. Thallium is a newer poison. It was only discovered in the 1860s, more widely used. It's water soluble, tasteless, and it actually took several days for symptoms to appear. And so we can definitely see some delayed concerns. Formaldehyde in the 19th century, many dairy producers were having trouble with milk contamination due to sanitation concerns. And so sometimes some of the milk and the dairy was being watered down or adulterated with contaminated water that sometimes had formaldehyde and other chemicals in it. And so that was also a concern with some of our food supply in the late 1800s and 1900s with our chemicals. Also, another one that I thought was interesting was that coffee in the 19th century really was a small amount of actual coffee, but it was a lot of fake product. People would char things like bones and they would crumble them in as an additive to bulk up that more expensive coffee. And so sometimes it would be sawdust with lead and other things. And so some might say that a muddy cup of coffee, or that phrase, a muddy cup of coffee, came from this time frame in terms of all the adulterated coffee products that were out there. Borax is still a common thing that's in a lot of pesticides. It has antiseptic and antimicrobial properties, and was another thing that potentially was added to food to stretch the food. At one time, there was a campaign about borax being in butter and other household products. And asbestos is a common thing that was manufactured into many of our homes, whether it be into the insulation or other textiles woven into there, and that was very commonplace in that time frame. All right, let me just show you some other ones from my collection. Here are some different medications that are out there. I'm not even going to try to pronounce all of these, but you see on the left there is a cold medicine that had been touted that it removes sticky mucus accumulations from the nose and throat passages. So irritating, non-irritating solution for babies even, they had touted. And so in that ingredient list is a number of different things from alcohol to borax to eucalyptus and menthol and other oils. On the right is another cough syrup. It has 3% alcohol, but it also has chloroform in it, which was a common additive in many of our household things. This is an advertisement for a Penta, I believe is how it's pronounced. It's a green glass bottle with this magical water that came from Hungary in the early 1900s. It was a bitter water. It often contained magnesium, sodium bicarb, lithium, potassium, and was meant to treat certain thyroid disease and food poisoning. Others took it as a laxative to help with disorders of the liver, kidney, even female disease, or so to speak, at that time. But many different advertisements for all of these different medications, whether or not that was true and really what it was promoting. Some other pain reliever products. On the orange there, we have a muscle rub that also contained chloroform and 53% alcohol, which is quite a bit, and camphor. Heat is still a brand out there, and the chloroform is gone, but products have had to change throughout the years as we've learned the risks and dangers of many of them. And some other pain relievers there, whether or not they worked for what they were intended to. In fact, the Doan's pills there in the green, there was some Federal Trade Commission concerns with the ads leading to false advertisement. And so some of that had to be taken off the market. There's so many things out there that we could be seeing or experiencing, whether it is in our homes, in our garden, or garages, or other places. Many people will often ask the Poison Center, well, where do I get rid of these products? I have some of these old things, these old pesticides, these old things, and I'm concerned to dispose of them properly. And so this is a map of many of the hazardous waste disposal locations throughout Missouri. This is found on the Missouri Department of Natural Resources website. It was a great thing you could put in your zip code and find the nearest hazardous waste location. There are many different parameters to follow, whether it comes to disposing of lead paint or asbestos, other types of things. So it is important before you handle any of these more serious poisons, antique poisons, that you reach out, look at some of the disposal and the safety concerns surrounding that. And again, that's on the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. Lastly, I just want to share that we are here for you at the Missouri Poison Center, no matter if it is an antique or a common day or a current poison. We can assist you 24/7. One of our specially trained nurses, our pharmacist, is able to help you anytime. And again, our phone number is 1-800-222-1222. Save that number in your phone, have it available to ask those questions, or if there is a poison exposure, give us a call.